The key to making your sewing projects looking all profesh isn't about sewing at all. No, 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 no. It's about embracing the iron and pressing. So let's learn about all the different tools, techniques, and science of ironing. Editing corn. Nailed it. We're ready for that intro. My name is Cornelius Quiring. That's my logo. That's my word mark. And Cornelius.ooh is my website. Before we even cut out our first pattern piece, we need to make sure we give that big old sheet of fabric a pressing. But first, let's take a step back. We've given it a nice pre-wash to help shrink it down to size and then folded it up real nice and put it away for later use. Now being that later use, unfold the fabric and you see how we've ended up with these creases and wrinkles? A crease like this can end up adding a couple millimeters up to 1/8 of an inch to the size of your pattern piece. You get a few of them, and this starts to become a compounding issue. And your two seams that are supposed to go together and be the exact same size are, well, no longer matching each other. If you're sewing something like a placket on a shirt, well, every millimeter makes a world of a difference. Precision is key. So let's just take the time necessary and give it a nice pressing. Yes, it's a pain in the tuchus, but if there's one thing I can impress upon you, it's that issues are truly compounding when it comes to making a garment. And you notice how I said pressing, not ironing? Well, editing corn. We've got ourselves a transition to Chapter 2. To iron a fabric means that you're dragging it around to press your fabric nice and flat. If you're pressing your fabric, you press down, hold, move over to the next spot, and continue along. Now, why do we make the distinction between the two? Depending on your type of fabric, that dragging can stretch your material, which in turn means seams won't match up, or when you put it in the wash, it's going to shrink down and be the wrong size. This is most obvious with knit or stretchy fabrics, a bit like my rib knit here. If you're working with a lightweight or loose weave fabric like this, there's a chance that dragging the iron is going to warp your fabric as well, which means you'll end up with a sort of sideways garment like this, which that's not ideal, you know? With something like this medium weight, tight weave cotton here, yeah, go ahead, drag that iron. It's not really going to make any kind of a difference. But for the sake of good practice, I would encourage you to press. Am I some sort of a saint who presses every single time? Now, there is one scenario where dragging our irons is perfectly fine. When our garments are all done and we're just looking to get those wrinkles out of there so we look clean and pristine. The reason dragging doesn't matter is because we don't have any more seams to match up. When we're pressing our fabric, it's a combination of the heat from the iron combined with the pressure that helps us get the wrinkles out. But those two will only get us so far, which is where we get our third magical ingredient, water. With our irons, that comes in the form of the steam being generated in those little nozzles underneath. Or if you want to take it one step further, the spray function. But in order to have the water be as effective as possible, it's best actually to let it soak into the fibers of the fabric a little bit, which is why I've actually started using a spray bottle to give it a nice little dampening. See how it has a, a nice continuous spray? I'll share a link to it down in the description. If we can just get a little science-y here and say you're pressing a plant-based material like my cotton here, the water is actually breaking those hydrogen bonds, and then the heat and pressure of my iron is flattening out all the different molecules in there. And then as it cools down, it reforms in this nice smooth material that we want. Wools and silks are protein-based, so in that case the water is making those hydrogen bonds more bendy. The heat and pressure gets to work. And then for the fully synthetics, like polyester, well, the water and moisture is actually helping prevent us from scorching the plastic, and then we're actually softening it up with the heat. Press it flat, cools back into the nice flat form that we want. Boom. Science. If you do still use the built-in features, pro tip, empty out the water after you're done using it, because it greatly reduces the chances of the mineral and calcium deposits forming in the inside and then coming out when you steam your garment and possibly permanently stain your whites and lights. Ask me how I know. Or option number 2, use exclusively distilled water in your iron. We're now knee-deep in the sewing stage of our project, and it's best practice to press every single seam after we've sewn it. And I know the inclination or desire may be to leave it all to the end once we're done, but it's going to reduce our precision and accuracy. I'm working on a collar here, and I've sewn all the layers together, so now it's time to go ahead and flip this inside out to do a top stitch. I'm now having to tug on the different layers of fabric to make sure it all lays as flat as possible, while also making sure I stay on the edge while I sew. I'm basically introducing extra variables that can and will inevitably reduce the quality of my work. But if I take a little extra time to first press that nice and flat, now I can just focus on laying down a beauty of a clean top stitch. Cornelius, what kind of iron should I buy? Is a frequent question that I get. And just like sewing machines, well, really depends on your situation. So, let me walk you through a handful of different options, and you can decide which one makes most sense for you. First up, we have these two options, which I'm going to call full-size irons. They tend to be quite large in size. Like this one here is about a foot in length. One other thing to consider is what kind of a sole plate do you want on your machine? You can go metal, and it's usually aluminum or stainless steel, or do you prefer ceramic? If you're sewing a lot of heavy things, thick wools, and you just want to throw heat at it, and you really need to give it the an aluminum or stainless steel option is the best way to go. It's also extra smooth, which means it's going to glide real nice. But depending on the quality of your machine, well, it can produce some hot spots and scorch your fabric, so you got to be careful. The benefit of a ceramic is that it does a fantastic job of evenly and consistently distributing the heat. So if you're working with a lot of lightweights or delicates perhaps, this is going to be the way to go because you will make sure that you're not scorching what you're working with. Now, like any ceramic, you do need to be careful with it because it can chip. Next up, we have this beauty here, and it's a little bit smaller in size, but what makes it truly sing is the fact that there's absolutely no plug, which doesn't seem like a big deal until you're ironing your clothes every day and you're having to throw that wire around constantly as you're working your way around. It's a little detail, but it makes a big difference. It's got a point on each end, so no matter which direction you go, you're always facing forwards. This little one, I'll be honest, I didn't think I'd have much use for it until I set it up next to my workstation where I can just go ahead and sew what I need to, put it on beside me, press that seam nice and flat, and then keep on sewing. And I don't ever have to get up and walk over to my ironing station over there. Just work away. One definitely doesn't need to have this many irons. I'm well aware that I'm in a very privileged place that I get all these products sent to me to try out, exclusively because of all of you that watch, so thank you very much. Another thank you to Quality Sewing. A lot of the tools that you're seeing in this video, they have very generously sent to me over the years. I will be sharing the links down in the description. And one of the things that gives me a lot of joy is I regularly see comments from you folks telling me about your positive experiences with them as well. And finally, don't forget to use my coupon code CORN at checkout to save 10% off of almost everything on their website. You can also get a gravity fed, which means the weight of the water pushes down for a consistent and even steaming function, unlike the sputtering that sometimes happens with these home irons. Or go vintage like this 1950s beauty that I used to have. Absolutely loved it. Produced the most heat I've ever gotten out of an iron. First time I used it, I melted my polyester thread and scorched my fabric. Unfortunately, it conked out after a year. Why? I don't know, but if you know circuitry, electronics, wiring, all that kind of stuff, do share down below. I'd love to know. This is the first wool mat I ever got, and it's what tipped me over the scale from knowing that I need to be pressing at every stage to truly falling in love with the process. Wool mats are one of those things I feel like you don't truly get until you try it, but I'm going to try my best to explain it anyways. Wool is an insulator, which means all that heat from your iron as you're pressing is being trapped and put to work in a much more efficient manner, as opposed to you just losing it by dissipating through that cheap foam that you often get on ironing boards these days. It's also antimicrobial, so we don't have to worry about water and moisture making it all yucky and gross over time. And finally, if we look at wool on a microscopic level, we'll see that it's all scaly. And so it just offers some natural friction. And so it ends up feeling like the mat's actually gripping the fabric and preventing it from sliding. Wool mats come in all different shapes and sizes. There's little ones which are perfect to have next to you while you're sewing away. There is, of course, this lovely one, perfectly sized to fit on a standard ironing board. If you're really ready to commit and live this wool mat life, you can get a tabletop one like mine here, which is 2 feet by 5 feet. I love it for when I'm doing my pre-irons. And bonus, because of that grippiness of the wool, it prevents my large sheets from sliding off the table. And then most recently, I got this stack of square mats here, which come with this lovely linkage system on the underside. Pop that out, pop out the other one, spin it around, and boom, they've been secured. My full-size table wool mat dream has come to fruition. Pressing the curve of a sleeve cap is virtually impossible on a flat surface without creasing or wrinkling some other part of the garment, which is where you might consider something like a tailor's ham. It has all different kinds of curves, and you find the one that best matches whatever it is that you're trying to press. I wrap my project around and press it nice and smooth and flat. Another variation is a sausage ham. And wouldn't you know it, I have a video all about Tailor's hams and a free pattern. So editing corn, go ahead, share those links. You know the drill. A variation on this tool is the Tailor's anvil. It has all different sorts of bits and bobs that you can wrap your project around to get into those seams. There's also a point to put the tip of your collar fold over. If I had one, you know. You can just jam that on the edge and get that super pointy and crispy. I also love me this sleeve board here, which, as you guessed it, is fantastic for sliding on a sleeve, pressing that seam nice and flat. I can, of course, circle it around, and that way I won't get any creases along the top here. The other side's a little bit wider. Pant legs fit really nicely on here, or just any tube-like shapes in general. Scripting corn, we've delivered a decent amount of value over the last handful of minutes, right? Enough to be able to get away with squeezing in a little promo for our sewing and pattern drafting courses, right? The final tool you may consider using at the very end of your pressing is a tailor's clapper. After you finish pressing your seam, you push down with your tailor's clapper for a little bit, and it's essentially doing two things for you. It's acting as a heat sink, pulling that out of your seam, but also the pressure of you holding it down makes sure it stays nice and flat as it cools down. It's particularly useful for thicker fabrics, like my boiled wool here, or if there's a whole bunch of seams coming together where, even if you give it a good pressing, it still ends up being a bit of a round seam. There's also this fun 2-in-1 option, as recommended by a member of the Corn Cob Club, where the top is covered in wool so that I can lay my seam on top, and it opens it up real nice for pressing with my iron, and then flip it underneath, and boom, use it as a clapper. You'll often see these made out of a beech hardwood, and this is done for various reasons. First, it's moderately porous, which means it can absorb the moisture and release it. It also has a decently straight grain on it, which means that heat and moisture over time isn't going to twist and warp it. It sands nice and smooth for a good finish. And beech trees are also quite common, so just makes sense. Who would have thought we'd be talking about wood at some point in this video? And now, I pass the talking scissors over to you. Was there anything particularly insightful in this video that you find useful, or maybe I've overlooked a tip or two and you want to share it down in the comments? That would be greatly appreciated. Or perhaps you've been patiently waiting until the end of the video because you want to learn a little bit more about this super duper secretive club called the Corn Cob Club. You've heard there's exclusive content just for members. You're excited to join the group chat where we do weekly topics of discussion. And you're looking to save massively on my courses. Or, no, perhaps it's the fact that you also want your name in the video like these here wonderful folks. Well, a giant thank you to all the members who aren't a part of the club because it doesn't exist. Massive thank you. And it doesn't exist, but if you want to check out something, perhaps you go to this URL right here. Or hit that join button down below on YouTube. Oh boy, what is this? What is this business all about? We'll never know. We'll never know. So for now, probably better off just clicking clicking on one of these things here.